Hello everyone, my name is Ian and you are watching Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're new here and you like this kind of content, I hope you will consider subscribing. So I've got a pretty interesting bike review for you today. Now this is going to be kind of a hybrid between one of my first ride vlogs and a full review. I'm going to do the best I can in the 4 or so hours that I have to spend with this bike. So this is a 2023 CFMOTO Ibex 800T. So let's get something out of the way right up front. Yes, this motorcycle is built in Guangzhou, China. CFMOTO has been around for quite a long time. They're well known in ATVs, side-by-sides, things like that, but they're getting more established into the motorcycle world. Now personally, I have an open mind about these things, and I hope you will too. So let's talk a little bit more about the Ibex. So the Ibex is an adventure touring bike, but keep in mind this is not a rally race bike. This is not our super aggressive off-road bike like you get with a KTM 890 Adventure R or a Touareg 660. The reason for that are a few things. Ground clearance is not that great. 19-inch front wheel. The suspension travel is limited at around 160 millimeters or somewhere around 6 inches or so. I'll put the exact measurement below. However, on the positive side, look at what you get for the money. Look at all the equipment. Now, let's talk about specs since I'm getting into that. So if we look here, this is the brochure from CFMOTO. Okay, so it's the 790 KTM engine. So they got the engine from KTM and they're building it in a CFMOTO plant. KTM and CFMOTO have had a partnership for going back to around 2012, 2013. So this is not something really new, this partnership, but they are using the 790 engine. So if you've ridden a KTM 790 Duke or Adventure, this is that same engine. What's not the same as a KTM is the chassis design. It doesn't have the low slung fuel tank. It doesn't have the chassis frame, suspension, and all the shared components with the KTM Adventure lineup. It's very, very different. This is more touring oriented than those bikes. And it's also coming in at a lower price point. So let's look at the specs. So you've got 94 horsepower, liquid cooled parallel twin, full LED lighting. We'll do a walk around here in a minute. J1 brakes, so big brakes. They're J1, which is the same that KTM uses on their bike. So actually same brakes as a KTM, slipper clutch, fully adjustable KYB fork, adjustable rear shock. The adjustments on the fork, you do have compression, rebound, and preload. On the rear shock, you only have preload and rebound. There's no compression on the rear shock. ECT electronic throttle with cruise control. Cruise control is a nice thing to have. You can see the button here. It works much like the KTM system with the slider switch here, and then you can set there. So great to have that at this price point. Speaking of price point, this motorcycle is $10,499 as you see it here. Now, these tires don't come with it. These are the new Dunlop's TrailMax Raid, which I'm one of the first people in the US to be able to test them, so that's very, very cool, and we'll talk about the tires during this ride. But it doesn't come with those tires. It also comes with a couple accessories. I think it has like the side stand foot and maybe the larger foot pegs, but the luggage racks, the crash bars, the adjustable windshield, the big dash, cruise control, quickshifter, all LED lighting, all that comes for the price of $10,500. You do have ride modes. You've got rain and sport modes. There's no traction control at all on the bike. There is ABS. They did add an aftermarket ABS cutout switch, so it's not a CFMOTO factory item, but it is an aftermarket item that they've gone ahead and put on the bikes for this demo right here at the Revzilla Get On Adventure Fest. It comes standard with heated grips and a heated rider seat. That's pretty amazing for the price point. Quick shifter, we talked about, spoke wheels. So they also have an 800T, an 800S. So 800S is cast wheels, less equipment, less price, and things like that. So the T is the more upscale model and also the more off-road model because you're getting those spoke wheels. Now the wheels, I do not believe they're tubeless. I do think, oh no, it says right here, a Vuelta Cront tubeless system. So it looks like they are tubeless spoke wheels, which is pretty cool. You can see the raised center part of the rim here, so that's so the spokes, they must have like another layer of metal in there so that they're able to use tubeless setup. That's pretty nice because a lot of people complain when you don't get the tubeless wheels. 57 foot-pounds of torque, 6-speed wet multi-plate clutch, 32.5-inch seat height. I'll put the millimeters below. That's pretty approachable, pretty friendly for an adventure bike. But again, you do have that limited suspension travel here. 5-gallon or about 19-liter fuel tank. Curb weight, the brochure says 509 pounds, but the guy with CF Moto was saying it's more like 530. I can't verify any of that because I don't have a scale. We've kind of talked about the chassis, but the front 160 millimeter upside down fork, 150 millimeter in the back. I'll put the inches here below. J1 brakes, talked about that. Cornering ABS, so it does have an IMU, so it does have cornering ABS, which is kind of nice. Yeah, and then why don't we kind of take you on a little tour of the bike. All right, let's take a tour of the bike starting at the front. So again, the Dunlop Trail Max Raid Mission tires do not come factory, but that's cool that we can test these tires. We talked about J1 brakes, talked about the suspension. The crash protection, the ones you see here, comes standard. You don't have to go out and buy it. It comes with the bike. You have LED fog lights. Let me go ahead and turn those on. There's a switch right here to do so. So now you can see you've got the LED fog lights there. Full LED front lighting, which looks pretty nice and modern. Full LED turn signals. I like to see that. You can see the radiator under there. Come around the side. I like the design of the fairing. Looks like it's going to be pretty good wind protection. I think it looks really attractive. This bike carries more weight up high than the equivalent KTMs do, so you don't have that low center of gravity feeling. I'm just being honest with you about that. It's not something you get with this model. Factory skid plate, which looks like it would, you know, be like a stone guard for little things, but not for like major off-roading. Big brake lever. Foot pegs, I believe, are a bit of an upgrade over the standard ones from off-road. Standard center stand comes with it for that price. Standard luggage racks. You can see the passenger pegs here. You can see the KTM or CFMOTO 790 engine. Seat height, we talked about that, nice and low. Heated seat, luggage racks, pretty slim exhaust, tubeless wheels and tires. Rear brake, dual piston rear brake there. Here's the rear lighting setup, LEDs all the way around. Luggage racks are pretty nice and narrow, so I appreciate that. Chain drive, of course. You can see that center stand again we talked about. Shifter, does have a quick shifter. Bike looks pretty clean, like pretty well designed, nothing really hanging off. It does seem kind of wide up here with the fairings. Fuel tank, talked about that. Key to open it. Yeah, let's jump up on here. Let me kind of show you some of the dashboard and control. So when I bring the bike up off the side stand, it feels pretty heavy, pretty top heavy. It doesn't feel anything like a KTM 790 or 890 Adventure, just being honest. Okay, cruise control switch, up and down switch to go to the menus. So if you want to do that, you can press set, then you can hold. You can see here when you do that. So you know what, let me finish the controls and we'll go into the TFT. Turn signals, horn, fog light switch, mirrors, which are pretty big, handlebars, pretty big bar riser on these. Start stop switch, it reminds me of BMW switch gear for some reason. Four-way hazards, nice to see that. Handguards, again, they're plastic, they're not going to hold up in a crash, they're just more for wind and bugs and keeping your hands warm, things like that. 12-volt socket, USB socket, that's nice, you get USB and a 12-volt, appreciate having that. The windshield, to adjust the windshield, what you have to do is you have to have both hands, which I don't like this system, to be honest. They turn an opposing direct, no, you turn them towards you, then you can slide the windshield up and down. That's the range of motion you get. Now, if you want to do this while you're riding, you'd have to put on cruise control, get up here. I don't know, I'm not condoning that, I'm just saying that one could probably achieve that, but I wish they had just given you like a pull adjuster or something easier to use when you're riding. That'd be my advice or my critique. Now we can get into the TFT. Let's go back. Big 7-inch TFT. It could use a little more contrast, the text is a little small, but it's nice. It's a nice high-end looking screen. Indicator lights down below, fuel gauge, gear position indicator, riding mode indicator. Got some other indications here, side stand if you have heated grips on, different things like that. Speedometer in the middle, big tachometer here. So I like the dash, it's nice and big. For this price point, that's a nice dashboard. If you hit set, you get some information here. Tire pressure, which is reading out in bar, which doesn't do me any good because I don't know what bars are. Fuel range, temperature, battery, stuff like that. And then you can go up and down here, trip computers, instant fuel consumption. It's got a lot of different stuff you can look at, and I appreciate that. If you hold the up button, then you go in here and you can do drive mode, handle grip heater, seat heater. So to get to the grip heaters or the seat heater to change your drive mode, you have to go into the menus like that, and I don't like that. That is a critique I have. I would like to see them, you know, have a button here to activate your heated grip, something like that. So what else? And then you can do connections. It does have Bluetooth and things like that, which I don't have time to get into, unfortunately, in this review. So if you want to go back, you just hit this twice and go back. It's not too bad to use. It's not the best I've used, but it's not too bad. It's fairly easy to navigate. All right, first ride impressions on the Ibex 800T. So let me show you the first thing that I noticed when I ride the bike. Like first gear and a little bit second gear are kind of surgy, and the fueling is off. I can tell you, it doesn't have real good fueling in like first and second gear. First gear seemed the worst to me, like especially riding around camp. And it gets a little better when the bike's warm, but there's a lot of kind of on-off surging, and it just doesn't run well at low RPM in first gear. Now getting it out here up on the highway, oh man, the wind buffeting is, the wind is just hitting my Cryos Pro just in the right place where it's just vibrating the heck out of my helmet. I'm going to try making an adjustment on that, but I'm getting some wicked vibration. Now that's not really a dig against this bike. A lot of adventure bikes have this problem. This one's just hitting my peak of my helmet right at the worst possible spot, so I'll adjust that. You do have a quickshifter, and it's a 790 KTM engine, so you know what, it's pretty powerful. It's got, you know, 95 horsepower, quite a bit. I can already tell this is going to be a pretty good highway bike. Like, you have quite a lot of wind protection, and you kind of feel like you sit down inside the bike, so that's kind of nice. I like the TFT dash. The mirrors work really well. Well, I can't really test the brakes here in traffic, but the brakes, they feel okay. They don't feel like a KTM, but we'll get some more testing done. So my first impression was not great because of that kind of that weird stumbly feeling in first gear. And I'm not alone in that, because I talked to Chase on Two Wheels. If you watch his, he's like the OG of moto vloggers and reviewers. He has this bike for long-term testing, and he confirmed that it's just something weird in first gear. Chase also rode his Ibex from Atlanta, Georgia all the way here to Sturgis for the rally, which is like 1,800 miles. And he did it in like 2 days or something crazy, and he said the bike's pretty comfortable. So there's a pretty good confirmation on its touring capability, although for me I'd have to do something about this windshield. The handlebars feel really high, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I think a lot of you are going to like it, because when you stand up the bars are kind of high. I would like them to be lower personally, but that's just me. Alright, let's get the Ibex on the freeway. There's your acceleration. Acceleration is strong, you know, 95 horsepower. It's KTM 790 engine. It's good there. Up on the highway, so I don't know, let's see, what is our speed limit here? Probably 75 or 80. They're pretty generous out here in this part of the USA, Wyoming, South Dakota area. Okay, speed limit 75. Now I put the windshield up just before I click record. The buffeting's better, but it's still a little buffety. So at 70 miles an hour, I'm at 5,000 RPM, 72 miles an hour. I'll put the kilometers below. It's probably around 110, 115. If I go 80 miles an hour, and I don't know if that's accurate, but 80 miles an hour on the dash is 5,500 RPM. And the bike feels composed and pretty smooth and pretty comfortable, other than some wind buffeting. These Trail Max Raid tires, they don't seem to be too affected by the rain grooves. You get a tiny bit of wobble, but not too much. Again, these are not the factory tires that you get if you buy one of these bikes. Let's test the cruise control. So, set there. There we go. Yeah, and you get a little indication there what the speed you have set to. So I'm going to set it to 80. That's so nice to have cruise control. Really do appreciate that. I kind of have to duck down, because if I stay up here, I'm getting a lot of vibration. That windshield, I think, just needs more angle to it, or maybe it needs like needs like a deflector, like I always run on my bikes, you know. I think if you just got a better windshield or fix the buffeting, this would be a really nice place to have if you had to spend all day touring on the highway at 80 miles an hour. This bike's actually really good for that. It's seems like a great platform for long distance riding. Something I just ran into, I just noticed the cruise control will not allow you to set it anywhere above 80 miles per hour, which is not going to, if that's how these bikes are, that's not going to work here in the USA, because we need to set our cruise control quite a bit faster than that. To keep up with traffic here, I'm going about 90 miles an hour here in the fast lane. So yeah, it just won't do anything. If I go back down to 80, see, I can set it up to 80, but then when I try to go more than that, it just doesn't work. So I don't know if all the bikes are going to be like that, or if this is just like a pre-production or something, but if that's how they are, that's really not good. They need to change that. All right, let's hit some twisty roads with the Ibex 800. Now I have to remind myself as I ride this bike aggressively that I don't have any form of traction control. That's kind of weird to me that they didn't put traction control on this. I thought they probably would have done that. The quick shifter's a little clunky. It's not the best. It's not the worst quick shifter ever, but it's also not the greatest. The engine has good power at the top end. The low end power is just okay. I think that's why KTM went away from the 790. Just okay. And then it kind of has a dead spot around like 4,000 RPM. It kind of has a dead spot there. And then once you get to like 5,000, then it kind of takes off again and pulls pretty well up to redline. Quick shifter's okay. It's not that bad. And the handling, you know what, it's kind of what you expect from kind of a sporty adventure toury bike. Handles really nicely actually. These bikes with the 19-inch front wheels, they tend to really be good for this kind of stuff. It turns in really sharp and holds the line really well, even with these 50/50 tires. It's got plenty of power to be very entertaining. I will say the windshield a lot better with it all the way up. I still get buffeting. The Freeway was pretty bad. It's not too bad here on this kind of road. The riding position, I mean, I've been riding for over an hour now and I'm very comfortable. The seat feels fine, but again, without riding all day, you can't really give an opinion on that. The overall feel I get riding this bike, I don't feel like I'm really riding a budget bike in any way, or like a discount bike, or you know, for lack of a better word, a half-ass bike. It doesn't feel like that. Like, it doesn't perform that way, other than the kind of the wacky fueling in first gear. And I'm going to get this off-road to show you kind of how that is. So yeah, like 6-gear roll-on is not that great. Like, it's a little bit dead, again, under that 5,000 RPM. So if I'm riding along and I want to turn on my heated grips or my heated seat, I've got to go in here, press set, then I've got to hold up on this button, then I've got to go down again to click into the handlebar heater, then press set, and then I can use up and down. So it's like 4 or 5 clicks. It's not that bad, but it could be a lot better. But you know, there's other bikes that are like this. It's not just CFMOTO. Wow, she handles well. Like, this is a great little sport bike. All right, let's do a little off-road testing with the Ibex. I'm like, you know, 1,500 miles from home here, so I'm a little bit out of my element, but I'll try to figure out some places to go. So slow speed on the Ibex, like first gear, like making U-turns, it's fairly top heavy. It's not as bad as like a v-strom 1050, or maybe even like I'll see, it stalls out. So the 790 motor does stall a little bit more, but partially I'm just not used to the clutch yet. So I'll try to show you the kind of the power delivery in first gear. I don't know if this is someone's house, or I don't know. I don't think so. So first gear, like, it just won't hold a steady RPM. It kind of surges. it just doesn't feel very good. And I think for off-road control, it's not the best. It gets better when the bike is warm, but like trying to ride it smoothly, real slow, like about 10 miles an hour, it doesn't feel so good. It's just kind of difficult to ride like that. It's like, see right there, 3,000 RPM. It's just like bucking. It just won't ride properly. The suspension is pretty compliant, pretty smooth ride, but it does get a bit out of its element when you start hitting bigger bumps and things like that. So it's not going to be good for riding fast. And I really find this bike hard to ride in first gear. Once you get into second gear, it doesn't really seem to have that problem anymore. So it's just that real low speed stuff. If you start to ride a little faster, yeah, you can bottom the rear shock out like almost instantly. Yeah, so it's totally capable. It's totally fine doing these kinds of roads. It's just not the best. Like, it just needs a little bit of work, you know. But the suspension is not bad. For the price point, it's really not bad. It gives a pretty smooth ride. It's just kind of soft and things like that. The biggest thing that bugs me is just that low speed fueling. It's just really not right. Yeah, the ergonomics for standing, a lot of you are going to like it. I don't really like it for me, but I'd rotate this bar forward, and I'd like a shorter bar, because it puts you to like prairie dog. You don't want a prairie dog off-road. You want to be more, you know, down here like this with your bending at your hips. But anyway, that's a story for another day. I like these new Dunlop tires. They feel good. The bike feels pretty stable. I mean, I don't have any sand to test here. It's not like the desert where I live. But it feels like the geometry is fairly stable. It doesn't feel too twitchy or anything from sort of my limited test ride here. Yeah, the suspension starts to get pretty harsh once you start riding over like rocks, riding a little bit faster. But it's okay, you know, it's okay. It's not as good as a v-strom 800. It's not even close to as good as that off-road, if you're wondering. But it's better than, like, I think it's better than a v-strom 650. Going down this kind of rocky, loose two-track. I can't emphasize enough I'm sorry to have to do this, but the problem with the fueling in first gear, it's so unpredictable. And sometimes you roll on some throttle and it just doesn't go, and other times it kind of bucks forward. It's very unnerving and makes the bike one of the hardest bikes to ride at low speed first gear off-road that I've ever tested. They need to fix that, and I hope that because I'm sharing this, maybe they'll consider, you know, looking at that and trying to put out a fix for that. If you ride in second gear, most of the problem goes away. Talk about the ABS situation for now, at least for now as I'm filming this review in July of 2023. The Ibexes don't come with a factory ABS off switch, which I think is a mistake, honestly. But what they did for this demo event here is they put on an aftermarket defeat switch. I guess it was good enough to meet their needs, so all the bikes here have it. But this doesn't come if you go to your dealer right now. I don't think you're going to get this. So what this does is it essentially faults the ABS. It just shorts it out and faults the system, and then you get an indication saying ABS, which means ABS error, which means ABS is off. So now I can lock and slide the rear wheel and the front wheel. It turns off both front and rear ABS. So there's no off-road ABS availability where you can leave the front and turn the rear off, which is another mistake, I think. Now, in order to get the ABS back on, what I have to do is I have to power cycle the bike, because if you just press that, it's not going to turn back on. So Right, well, I conveniently forgot to ask the CFMOTO folks, the nice folks at CFMOTO, if I could go ahead and drop their motorcycle. Conveniently forgot to ask, so I'm going to assume that they said yes and are okay with it. We're going to drop it on the right-hand side, and because I don't want to damage the shift lever, I'm not sure how things are going to hold up. We're not going to drop it. We're kind of going to gently lay it down to see how difficult it is to pick up. I can already tell it's going to be a lot more difficult to pick up than a 790 or an 890. We don't know how it would be compared to like a v-strom or a T7 or something like that. It doesn't have the low center of gravity of some motorcycles. So I'm going to very gently lower it down, show you kind of what's impacting, and then we'll go ahead and do our lift. So this is a little sketchy because I really don't want to damage it. Whew, okay. So you can see it's resting kind of a little bit on the pegs, the luggage rack. The crash bars there, yeah, the crash bars are doing their job. I don't know how they'd hold up in like a high-speed test, crashing real world, but at least in a tip over, I think they're going to do okay. So falls pretty flat, honestly. So let's go ahead and do the old lift here. All right, well, it's heavy. I would say I would give it like a C plus, maybe. It's heavy bike. It's a little hard to lift. I'd say it's kind of maybe a little easier than a T7, but it's not as good as like a v-strom 800 or a KTM 890. I'd say it's harder than a 1250 GS. It kind of reminds me of picking up the 850 GS Adventure that I tested. Pretty heavy, top-heavy bike, you know, but not too bad. At least you get the crash bar standard. That's nice. So I had an idea. What if we tried rain mode to cure the throttle response? Well, unfortunately, that doesn't really seem to fix it. The throttle response in rain mode is much softer for the first half of the travel, but if I try to ride at 3,000 RPM, it still is really just jerking back and forth. And if I go first gear, yeah, that effect is even worse. It just can't do it smoothly. It's just surging like crazy. It's a little better in rain mode than sport mode, but it's not going to solve the problem. Even in second and third gear, if you try, you can still feel this fueling problem. It's not just limited to first gear. It's just most noticeable in first gear. Well, it's time we try to wrap this up. Now, I know this has been more of a first ride vlog than it really has been a full review. It's just that I only have the bike for 3 or 4 hours. So I've spent the last about 4 hours with this Ibex, and there's good and there's bad, and we've really kind of talked about that. One thing I've been thinking about as I ride back towards Sturgis to the rally is, you know, it's really difficult for a manufacturer to bring new models to market. It's difficult for a new manufacturer to become established and respected, and then again, it's even more difficult to actually get a motorcycle on the market, go through all the certifications, all the safety, all the costs involved with that. Trying to figure out what riders want, strike a balance between street and dirt, figure out what price they're going to have, what features they're going to put in. It's really difficult, and I have respect for that. Now, if you're considering one of these, you're just going to have to think about the ups and downs that I've talked about. People are going to want to know about reliability. I just don't know. I'm sorry. I just don't know about the reliability. It's a newer brand in terms of motorcycles. It's a known engine, however. They have been making other products side-by-sides for quite a long time. We just don't know. Dealer support, dealer network, I don't know. There are a lot of CFMOTO dealers, but they would need to have them carry the motorcycle line, I think, to support this. I don't know how many that is. You know, how is it going to be to own it? I don't know. These are good questions, legitimate questions that you should have if you're going to be an early adopter of a new product like this. If we look at what you're getting here for the money, all the stuff you see, the performance, the features, the comfort, it's a lot of motorcycle for around $10,000. Now, if you want to do a lot of off-roading with your adventure motorcycle, am I going to recommend an Ibex? Probably not. Based on what I'm seeing with the throttle response, the soft suspension, the limited suspension travel, probably not a lot of off-roading. Some gravel roads and dirt roads, fine. Some two-track, okay. But get a Tenere 700, get a v-strom 800. get a Touareg 660. There's a lot of options that are be much better off-road. As a street bike though, it's pretty good. It's fast, it's engaging, it's fun to ride, it's comfortable, it's got a lot of features. So there's the ups and downs you have to balance. Here's what I want to know. I have a genuine question. Would you purchase one of these? And why or why not? That's just a basic question I have. Please put that down below in the comments and we can have a good discussion about it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful and informative. If it was, please support Big Rock Moto. There's ways to do that in the video description below. Other than that, ride safe and I'll see you out there.